Hey everyone. Today we're going to be taking a look at my world record run for Frogger's Adventures 2 The Lost Wand. My name is Arthur, also known as Arborist77. I'm joined today by my co-commentator, who will introduce himself now.
Josh, also Casey Stranger.
Great. So this is a Game Boy Advance game released in 2002. Not exactly a popular game. I don't think a lot of people have heard of this one, but it's a real classic from my childhood. It's a top-down 2D platformer like a lot of other Frogger games. Honestly, not a common genre that you see nowadays, but a really fun game. And honestly, I think it's a really ideal game for getting into speedrunning. If anyone is um, interested in that. It's got a lot of neat tricks, but nothing that's too difficult to pull off. It really rewards practice and mastery without being too difficult to get into as a beginner. Trying to think anything else we should go over before we get started, Josh?
Yeah, I should probably just mention we are going to be looking at Arthur's world record run. This is one of two sub 30-minute runs on the leaderboard. If you ever feel like taking on this game yourself, I challenge you to beat my run, which I view as sort of the you must be this tall to enter run. It's a rather forgiving 33:51. So yeah, and then maybe the other thing to mention before we get into it is this game is almost entirely on a grid. So it has pretty well controlled inputs, and you'll also see at some points Frogger will like snap to the grid, and you can either get really forgiven by that or really punished by it, depending on exactly how you're aligned. Also, there is a lack of command buffering in this game, so keeping up your rhythm with getting all your button presses at the right moments is really a central thing that you'll see all throughout the run.
Definitely.
But yeah, other than that, not too much. Shall we go ahead and get started?
Well, I do want to mention what you're saying again. There's really only 5 people on the speedrun.com leaderboard, so the game is wide open for anyone who wants to challenge that. So definitely always welcome to see more runners for this game. But yeah, with that, let's jump right in. Let's do some Frogger.
All right, here we go.
Cool. So we always start with a fresh save. This game is very nice that it lets you basically skip all cutscenes and all dialogue with a single button press. But yeah, so we're hopping into the very first level. It's a super straightforward level. It teaches you all the basic mechanics. There's basically 4 moves that Frogger has, right? So you can move in any cardinal direction. You can jump, which takes you 2 squares and sort of skips anything in the middle. You can lick with your tongue, which you use to interact with a lot of things, and you can turn your character in any direction, which is really important later on. But that's it, really. The first level is just super fast. Not much to go over there. The splits happen right after the last droplet is gained in that last level. So yeah, we're already into the second level here. This level is pretty straightforward as well. Really, the whole first world is pretty straightforward. The one tricky thing with this level is, especially for new players, you'll find that there's a lot of sort of trick paths and fake jumps that if you jump on, you just end up dying. So the first time around, there's a lot of deaths just trying to figure out what you're supposed to do. But
Yeah,
having run this level a lot, it's pretty straightforward.
totally personally, like, you get into a pretty nice flow on this level pretty early. It was one of the first levels I really felt comfortable with, but playing through it blind, you just get mercilessly trolled. Some of these springs,
Yes.
you can't actually see where they're going until you jump on
Yeah.
them, and then you just fly to your death. So,
Yeah.
really
Absolutely.
merciful developers here.
It's worth noting, yeah, especially in this part right here. This part is just kind of a lot of trial and error and figuring out what you survive and what you don't. It's worth noting here that Josh actually found a hidden platform not too far from this location um, that is ultimately completely useless.
I really
You
wanted
want to
it to
talk
be
about that?
useful. Yeah, just
Yeah.
like the developers didn't remove the actual landing spot for some of these tiles, even though they
Yeah.
removed them visually. But sad day.
So with that, that's the first section of the first world, and now we're on to the first boss. I think the bosses in this game are really interesting. They're each completely unique, and you can see in this one. So the basic gimmick of this level is the Sammy the salamander up there at the top has been transformed by the fire shard, which maybe we'll talk about the shards later if we have some time. But so you're trying to wait until he falls asleep, so he drops that fire shard up at the top. But these birds keep coming out and trying to wake him up. So you just have to lick him with the tongue to knock him out. This is one that is very finicky, and you really have to get into a kind of a flow state, especially towards the end of the level, just because the birds start popping up faster and faster and faster. And one missed input can mean instant death, because if you lick the dragon up at the top, or if you run into him, both of those lead to instant death. So.
Yeah, and also some of these bosses are some of the most punishing points to die in the entire run. If you're going for a really good run, it's basically reset if you get through most of this fight and then accidentally lick the dragon. So.
Absolutely. So honestly, yeah. So with this whole game, deaths are the biggest way that you lose time, which is true of a lot of games, but is especially true of this game. So I found that once I had gotten some pretty good runs under my belt, I would reset if I had a death anywhere in the first 2 worlds. So, so yeah, we're on to the second world, the snow world. I want to give a particular shout out to Angelus, the number 3 on the leaderboard for that particular side strat. I had always kind of gone through the snowmen before that, but their run showed me otherwise.
Yeah, it's actually
also the.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say that the cycles are really important on this level. It's really important that you do this whole first section as quickly as possible, because at this very last section right here, you see these moving platforms. It's so important that you arrive at the right time on those platforms. Otherwise, you can lose a lot of time waiting for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just going to mention earlier, it's actually amazing how many points there's like seemingly unintended, but once you see it, it's so obvious that you're like, oh, maybe the devs actually left it in on purpose, kind of like
exactly
sideways ways to avoid a lot of the hard stuff. So
yeah, definitely. There's not much interesting routing in this game, but when there is, it's really neat to find. So, for example, right here, I mean, this is definitely intended, but you can hop straight over to this minecart over here instead of having to walk onto it. This level is one of the favorites of mine. I really like the music for this level. I like the music for this whole game, but particularly for this level. But this level's got a lot of just like sitting on minecarts and waiting around. So, gotta get those droplets in the meantime.
Yeah, maybe this is a good chance to talk about some of this game's deep and storied lore.
Perfect. Yeah. So in essence, at the start of this game, Frogger has come back from one of his previous adventures. This is Frogger's Adventures 2, so he's recently come back from some other adventures, but he's quickly pulled in by this wizard who tells him that the Eternity Wand, which is this magic wand with 5 different shards, has been completely destroyed and broken up, and so he has to enter this magical realm and find all 5 of these shards that have been lost and scattered throughout. So each of these realms has like a different shard that's associated with it. The first one had that fire shard, which we ended up collecting after the first boss. And then really interestingly, like each of the future bosses, you use a shard that you've collected from a previous boss.
By the way, sneak in here. Getting all the droplets in this section is essential. Keep going.
It is essential, and I'm pretty sure I failed it. Yeah, yep. I missed it. So this is not actually a true world record.
not verified.
But yeah, so you're collecting these shards, and we'll see how that ends up for Frogger at the end. But
yeah, and obviously you're skipping a lot of the dialogue, but one of the things I found most amusing about this is at the very beginning, Frogger says like, "Oh, I'm ready for another adventure," and then he spends the entire game just desperately wanting to go home.
Yep,
every single one of these dialogues.
Yep, he hates how cold this level is. He hates how hot the next one, and how spooky the one after that one is. So he does not seem to enjoy being on this adventure. But anyways, we're about to finish off this the levels for this this second world, and we're on to the second boss, which is Frostbite.
Yeah, so this is another one of those very long boss fights. Now, Arthur, remind me, I believe the only way to really gain time on this is that the bombs are going to come out in 3 cycles. You got a fairly forgiving time window to lick them into these holes, as you can see.
Right.
I think it's really just the timing of the last bombs of each cycle that's really important.
Yeah, that's right. And you'll sort of after playing this level for a while, you start to notice where the bombs are and can kind of preempt them in a lot of cases. But yeah, the only real time saves are on the very last bomb, where once you've pulled the bomb in, the fire shard will show up right in front of him, and you just have to go over there and grab it as fast as you can. Which you can see right there. The fire shard shows up right under Frogger, and you just get that. You just have to do that 3 times in a row. So.
Yeah, and again, to mention, at the point that you've run this a ton, like, legitimately, this isn't actually that hard. It probably doesn't look that hard up front. I failed this so many times trying to learn the level. You get one input wrong, you're going down a hole, you're jumping on a bomb. They do explode if you land on them.
Yeah, I will definitely say I've definitely gotten to like the very last part where I'm like, there's only 1 fire shard left to pick up. I'm running over to get it, and then I fall in a thing. That's like 2 or 3 full minutes just completely lost. There's no way around it. So, so here we're gonna pick up the fire shard again. Yeah, all of the bosses, like you were saying before, absolutely brutal to die on, especially late in, just because it loses you so much time. But fortunately, these first 2 bosses are super straightforward once you've gotten used to them. The next 2 bosses are really, honestly, probably 2 of the hardest levels in the game. But
yeah, so maybe one thing we can mention while the rest of this fight is playing out is lives in this game. If you play through it casually, there will not be nearly enough lives for you. At least that was my experience. Speedrunning it turns out to be extremely forgiving, to where you can basically skip over everything. But you'll see green Froggers throughout the levels that Arborist will mostly ignore. You'll also see these blue droplets. You get 20 at the end of every level, and also every 20 will give you an extra life.
Yeah, so there we go. So they've picked up the last fire shard, so now he's just gonna slowly die to this bomb in his own belly. One thing I like about these bosses actually is that they're not very like combat focused. It's really just kind of like sort of puzzle solving and doing other things, and then eventually letting the boss defeat itself.
Yeah, in fact, I don't think there are any enemies in this game that you actually damage. It's just all
that's a good point. It's all about survival for Frogger. Okay, so this is the fire world. This is where things really start to get tough. I think basically everything past here is it starts to get very difficult. So yeah.
If you look online, you will see lots of people saying that this game is way too hard, and I totally understand. Again, you can definitely get used to all of it, but another thing I'll mention, the hitboxes on these gummy bears here is really deceiving.
I love that you call them gummy bears. There's so many there's like a lot of weird enemies in this game that it's like kind of hard to tell exactly what they're supposed to be. Oh, this part right here, there is a fast cycle through those geysers that are coming up, but I just to take it because it was not consistent enough. Similarly, those gummy bears right after those geysers, there's a fast route through those as well. But again, just did not seem worth it when trying to trying not to die. Again, so, like, not dying is the most important thing for any speedrun. Like, this was probably I think I only had 1 unintentional death in this run. That's like the main reason that it was such a good run. It's not about any other particular strats. It's like just not dying.
Yeah, and I was actually rewatching it this morning just as a refresher, and you'll see he dies in a fortunate place.
Yes, exactly. We'll get to there soon enough.
But yeah, I would say to like really improve from this run, you'll want to definitely like start looking at some of those smaller talk about that. That's
an awesome little trick right there. Winterbit, who's the number 2 who previously had the world record, has a slightly different version of that trick, but I think the one I've got there is actually slightly easier to pull off. But that saves a ton of time. It saves probably like 15 or 20 seconds.
Yeah, you need to ride one of those platforms all the way down to the bottom, then go over that entire bridge.
So like I was saying before, there's not much to routing in this game, but there are some fun little sequence breaks that you can do like that. and yeah, we'll point them out when we see them. But
Yeah, there's a lot of micro optimizations, but only a
Exactly.
few really big skips.
Right. This part right here looks very terrifying, but fortunately the hitboxes on these phoenixes is not too bad. So
Yeah, I think
uh,
pretty much every enemy in the game, it's only like one square under them that's actually affected by them, but
right.
those guys happen to be like 2 squares wide, so...
Yeah, they look much bigger than they are, but so that part is not very scary. But the rest of this level, the phoenixes can actually be. Yeah, this level, I remember this level being pretty tough, but actually there's only a few really challenging parts, I think, especially towards the end of the level that that can really get you. But with enough practice, this level is actually, I think, not one of the. I think the previous level in from my experience is a little bit harder than this one.
Yeah, I think this
Yeah,
level
look
is
at that.
mostly just terrifying, because
Yeah.
if you die, it's extremely punishing, and it's a rather small mistake to die.
Hmm. Definitely. So there are some nice parts about this though, which is that so usually when you die, you just completely go back to one of these little checkpoints, these like black and white squares. These are checkpoints. Um, and usually when you die, you don't have anything saved, after that. But actually, you'll notice that there's some of these like moving platforms that we're activating. If you activate one of those and then die, it actually gets saved. This section right here is particularly terrifying. I think it's very scary to know like how many squares you should push in that particular section.
Yeah, if you drop an input going for like skipping one of those segments, going
Yeah.
like 2 slots at a time, yeah, you will die. It's not
Yeah.
that tight. If you do it right, you'll get it every time. But like,
Mhm.
yeah, I've died
No,
many
but
times there.
it's definitely a question of like, do I push for 2 or do I just go for 1? It's pretty tough
Yeah. Also,
because you have to make that decision in a split second. So
absolutely. These fire bars right here, this is a great example of where snapping to the grid can screw you. Going down, they're not that bad. Coming up, because of the way the alignment works, it's obnoxious.
yeah, definitely that can be an annoying spot. But yeah, we're almost at the end of this level right here. Just a few more of these phoenix type things. I don't know, phoenix, firebird, unclear.
Yeah, I never settled on a name for them quite so hard as the gummy bears. So.
All right, so this we're gonna get to this next one is I think the second hardest level of the game, and um, can be quite challenging to pull out. So basically, what it amounts to is you have to stay on these moving platforms and find those ice shards when they spawn. And then you'll see he freezes. You need to do that 3 different times, and then after the second one, he starts doing this move where he pulls lava across the entire stage, which means you have to get to one of these side platforms. So that move is particularly terrifying. But yeah, the platforms themselves are super finicky. You can see again, like what Josh was saying with the snapping. Sometimes you can think that you're going to land on one of these platforms and just completely miss it. And then we got very lucky there that we could pick up the last ice shard before the lava fully came in. So there's a lot of RNG in this fight. We got very lucky with some placement for things. But yeah.
Although the other thing, just to mention real quick, I did do some looking at this level. There are actually only 4 platforms that can spawn the shard. 2 on the inner ring and 2 on the outer. But everything's so chaotic that it's it appears random, even though it's not so much. But anyways, on to the next level.
Yeah, so we enter Spooky Worlds. This I'm sure there's some better name for it, but this is one of my favorite just like worlds overall in the game. It's a super fun aesthetic. But so yeah, we're going through this path through the town, and then we're gonna get to a castle, and then we're gonna have probably the most annoying boss fight of this game, but also kind of my aesthetic as well. So this part isn't too bad. Mostly straightforward. These sort of lick platforms, triangle platforms, whatever you want to call them here. It's pretty scary if you miss an input here, because if you jump without having done the lick first, you'll just almost always die. So yeah, you just really have to take your time there and make sure that you have hit all of your inputs. That's a spot that you can take a safety save at. Ultimately, I've decided that it's not worth taking the time off to do it.
It does actually waste quite a bit of time to take
Yeah.
that save. Although I think if I remember right, yeah, you scum and
I
take
do
that
take a
one.
safety save there, just because it's so close and you don't lose a lot of time from it. But yeah, if you die at one of these spots without having taken a safety save, you can have to redo this entire sort of lake section, which is very annoying. And there we go. That's the end of that level. Yeah, that's another one that is definitely terrifying. This level coming up, probably my favorite level of the game.
Honestly, agreed.
Yeah, it's got a great soundtrack too, and just has such a fun atmosphere, and also some really interesting platforming and puzzles and things. So.
Compared to the other levels, so most of the other levels are like these giant rooms where it's just like everything is cycling at the same time. This one has all these little unique challenges. Like, it almost reminds me of playing something like Celeste, where you just have like one room at a time and they're all kind of unique.
Yeah, it's very nice. You can see that there's checkpoints at the beginning and end of every one of these rooms, which is, again, like you're saying, it just makes them kind of these self-contained challenges that you can deal with one at a time. This room coming up, this is infamous. This is the room number 2. It doesn't look particularly hard, but it is, let me tell you, having died on this room innumerable times, it feels like a crapshoot every single time that you run it.
Yeah, definitely. Like, the trick there is not to think too hard about it. If you think too hard about it, you die.
This trick here is my absolute favorite, and props to Winterbit for showing that off, because it looks super cool, it saves you a ton of time, and it gets you a really good cycle on the that ghost at the end there. So,
it's also ridiculously easier than doing it the way you naturally would.
Exactly, yeah. It looks like it's some like super clever, difficult thing, but it's actually quite a bit easier than the normal way. But yeah, these ghosts in general are kind of terrifying. You can see I skipped the cycle there just to stay safe. But this is also the point in the run, especially for this particular run, where my heart is just pounding, the adrenaline is rushing. So
yeah,
it is hard to stay sane here.
And again, like, there isn't any input buffering in this game. If you get your timing a little bit wrong, these guys will eat you. The timing is less forgiving than Arborist is making it look.
This next room up here too is another one that looks very daunting, especially when you first get there. But props again to Winterbit for a great little strategy that takes you right up that side. So, yeah.
This part, I think you were supposed to use that thing on the top as a clue, but it honestly... here's your death.
There you go. So that's the first death, and it is incredibly lucky that it is right in front of a checkpoint. So, yeah, I think that's the only unintentional death of the run.
Yeah, but you can see there,
which again is...
It's like 5 seconds he lost there. He could easily lose 50 somewhere else.
Yes,
so.
Absolutely. All right, so here we get to the toughest boss. So this is Fright Blight, like the Grim Reaper guy. So basically what we're going to do is, whenever you see those flashing lights, that means he's about to swing a scythe. So you just need to... our basic strat has been to get right up next to him, and then get around behind him. And then as soon as you see a white flash covering the whole screen, that means that the light shard, which you picked up from the previous boss, has appeared somewhere. We need to go grab it and create that circle around him. It doesn't look too bad here, but his hitboxes can be super finicky, and he is incredibly fast. So one little slip up and you have to restart this entire fight, which can easily, one death alone can be 1 to 2 minutes of time lost there.
Yeah, he also does have some other attack patterns that are a lot more difficult to deal with. We kind of baited him into a pattern here. I should also note that shard can spawn on all 4 sides, and he got very lucky with those.
I did, spawns. Yes. So we're on to the very last, the last normal world of this game. This is Technopolis, and this spot right here, it looks like I'm just kind of going through effortlessly. It is really difficult to get through those guys. You have to.
I think I died
like
3 times on my record.
Oh yeah. You have to practice that strat over and over and over again, and it's really important too that you don't die on there on your first playthrough, because you really want to arrive at this spot without having died so that you get the cycles right. So you can see these little jet ski things, which are horrendous, by the way. They seem like they're coming right as I need them. That's only because I hit that cycle and didn't die to the robots at the very start of the level. So
yeah, there are some cycles you can land on with that where the one from the other direction just never comes, and you just ride all the way into your doom.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely a time save here. You can jump across that little gap and just do a turn and lick. I've found that it doesn't save enough time to warrant doing, so I just kind of skip it. Another thing worth noting, these conveyor belts here can be kind of terrifying because if you get to the very end of one, it can just push you off and kill you. If you watch the previous world record run by Winterbit, you'll see that she hops like all the way to the very edge of the platform before jumping, which is it saves you a little bit of time, but it is incredibly dangerous. And whenever I don't know, from my perspective, I was in a run that I had not had or only had one death, so very little time loss. I wanted to take things as safe as humanly possible. So
yeah, although definitely there are lots of little points like that throughout the run where if you're looking to really optimize it, there's still a lot this game has left to give. Like,
absolutely,
this is a 39. I think like 38 or 37 should be pretty definitely possible if you're really optimizing it.
Are you saying 29?
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yep, definitely. All right, so here we get to the. So you call the other ones gummy bears. I like to think of these guys as eggs. They just look like little eggs that are cracking. But this level has an interesting strategy because it you'll see my first intentional death of the run, I think, and probably maybe only intentional death of this run. I think
intentional death.
Yeah, this little eyeball guy is kind of annoying because there's a bit of variance for where he's gonna poke, and if you jump into those lighted squares, it will be instant death. So he can be a little bit annoying. But yeah, so all we're trying to do is hit these 3 switches so we can open up another part. So you'll see I hit this switch and then jump into that pool right there. That just hops you right back over to this checkpoint. I honestly don't know how much time it really saves you. It's probably only like 2 or 3 seconds, but it's also a little bit more consistent. So.
And it's also 2 or 3 seconds.
Yeah.
All right,
seconds are really important here.
Yeah, so we're coming up on one of the more exciting parts of the run, I think.
Yep. So we're going to take a hard left and, oh boy, we're jumping onto the back road. So normally if you jump into this area, you would just die immediately. But that little hidden path was found. I first heard about that from Winterbit, again, the previous world record holder. But I believe, Josh, you found that independently, right?
Yeah, I found it independently just by being bad. Instead of going right, I went left.
Sure.
So...
It's worth noting, too, that it's only available in the American version of the game, or the North American version of the game.
Correct.
It was removed in the European version, which is what I had originally been emulating on. So I actually couldn't do that skip until I moved over to the American version.
We call that Tang skip, by the way, because of that orange background.
It's Tang skip. Tell all of your friends it's Tang skip.
That's right. We have to get the word out.
We have to get the word out. So this is Short Circuit. This is probably the easiest boss of the game, which is a bit silly since it is ostensibly the final boss. Although, of course, we'll see there's another one after this. But essentially, this is just a memory game. You just have to copy the moves that he does. And there's little musical cues to go along with it. It's really, it's a bit anticlimactic, I would say, for a final boss or a pre-final boss. But what can you do?
Yeah, although there is a much harder version of this fight, right?
Yeah, so once you've beaten the game, you can do boss refights, which are just like special, more difficult versions of the bosses. And the one for this one it's much more difficult. The pattern's go on much longer, and it's a tough fight. So, but fortunately, we don't have to deal with that for this basic version of the game. So,
yeah,
the pattern. Go.
No, please.
I was just going to say the patterns get a little bit more complicated here since they start to go a little bit faster with these weird cat head things, but still not too difficult.
So while we're waiting for this to finish out, maybe we can start setting up the plot for the end of the game here.
Yes, exactly. So you'll see it actually turns out that the wizard who called on you at the beginning to go find all the shards was actually an evil wizard, which we'll see very shortly, and he wanted you to get all the shards so that he could take control, and there he is, turning completely evil, and then he sends you to the Shadow Realm. So now you're now you're in the Magician's Realm, and so it turns out that it was his twin brother. It's like Hocus and Pocus. Pocus is the bad guy, and Hocus is the good one. So yeah, you know, ultimate, you know, top 10 anime betrayal.
Exactly.
This is the second to last level and the final like sort of platforming level of the game. Definitely not the easiest level, but if you take it somewhat slow, it's really not too bad.
Yeah, you'll notice these white squares that are sort of disappearing from under him while he runs over them. You will fall if you stay on those for too long. And
in particular, this spot right here is that jump looked very easy right there. I promise you, it is not. It is incredibly tight timing, and if you do it just a little bit too slow, you will die consistently over and over and over again, which I've had happen in previously good runs.
Yeah, Arborist and I have spent a fair amount of time just discussing, like, do you mash that? Do you try to time it?
It's tough. Interestingly here, it looks like you should jump on this guy and then keep going up, but actually you just have to turn around and go backwards. So that's a nice little skip as well. So now we're going to free up Hocus, and it's really just a straight shot to the final boss.
Yeah, so yeah, please.
Yeah, to set up the final boss real quick. It's basically a game of a big game of concentration, which is to say there's a whole bunch of cards. You need to select 3 of the cards of the same type without selecting any other cards. It seems like it would be really tough and would be super random each time, but there's actually only 5 patterns that the cards can appear in, which again, thanks to Winterbit for finding that. So once we see that ice block right there, we can immediately determine which of the patterns it is. So now it's just completely, you know, inputting those patterns, which you could memorize, or I think I actually just had a little PDF pulled up to the side. So.
Yeah, although at this point, you know what you need to do, but like, how nervous are you anyway?
Oh, I was like, you can see I like miss a few inputs there. I was absolutely terrified of missing this here, because I was not looking at the time, but oh boy, I was absolutely terrified. So from here, it's just a straight shot. The time will end once the droplets stop filling up in the top right corner. So it's just a straight shot through to the end. And yeah, I was I was incredibly nervous. My hands are shaking. I could feel them. My fingers like tingling. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the whole game. So and yeah, Frogger gets to enjoy life, life after his adventures. Yeah, I just want to real quick do some quick shout outs to all the other runners on speedrun.com who have contributed to this game, especially Winterbit, Angelus, Mr. Shasa, and of course Casey Stranger, who is commentating here with me today. Yeah, just for finding strats and helping getting into the game. And yeah, honestly, there's absolutely no way I would have done this run without all of them. So really want to thank all of them. Anything else you want to say before we?
I don't think so. Yeah, just like again, if this kind of game looks at all appealing to you, it's actually like super satisfying to learn to go fast in this game, and there's plenty of room for optimization and experimentation still. So like, yeah, don't hesitate to give it a shot. And Arborist, thanks for getting me into it. Any final words?
No, Frogger for life.
Frogger for life. All right.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care.